Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started in a minute. We do have the interpreting feature today. We do have ASL language and sign language, and then we also have interpreting into Spanish. If you would like to listen to this meeting into Spanish, please go to the bottom of your screen and select the language of your preference. Does look like a little earth, and then you click on that one, and then you can click on Spanish for you to listen to this meeting in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Vamos a comenzar en un momento. Tenemos lenguaje de señas en inglés. Y también tenemos la conferencia en español. Si usted quiere escuchar en español, vaya hasta abajo de su pantalla y seleccione el idioma de su preferencia en el icono que parece un mundo. Haga clic ahí y puede seleccionar al español.
Okay, thank you so much, Mariana. Hello, I'm Megan Krim, and this is a parent's guide to writing. And I know at home that it's much more than the parents who are supporting our students at home. So really, this is a guide to writing at home. To start this presentation, I would just want to go over some norms for this session. If you could please have a pen and paper available for a few exercises that you're going to be doing at home. If you can have the understanding that teaching students how to write is about the long game, about building independence and taking risks. And these slides will be sent out at the conclusion of this session, and we'll tell you how you can access these slides, because there will be links that you can use at home. We will have question and answer time at the end of this session, but you are certainly welcome to type your questions into the chat feature. There is a Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom that you're welcome to ask any questions during the presentation, and then we'll have some time at the end to answer them. So I mentioned I'm Mrs. Krim. I'm Megan Krim. I am a first grade English teacher at Albert Einstein. I have been teaching there for 9 years. I started out as a long-term sub in a first grade classroom, English classroom, and then I was lucky enough to be hired. I have 3 children, all AEA alumni, all 3 starting in kindergarten and going all the way through 8th grade in our middle school. I had the last 2 things on here, a master's in curriculum and instruction and running, because those are 2 things that I'm currently doing. And I think they're relevant because I had convinced myself that I was too old to go get a master's. And I had also convinced myself that I was too old to run still. And then we had this pandemic, and we had to kind of rethink things. And it turns out I can run. And I did it, but it took about 2 months of just kind of some calisthenics and doing it with my husband. And he was home, and I was lucky enough to be able to do a lot of stretching, and I got running again, which I thought I never, ever would be able to do. I convinced myself I was too old. And then the second thing is I had convinced myself that I don't need a master's. I'm good. I'm too old. Why would I do that? Well, in having my daughter get ready for college and researching how to pay for college, it turns out that I get some of the same veterans benefits that she got. And I just thought, wait a minute, I actually really do like learning. And so I am currently in a master's program, and I just love it. Curriculum and instruction is IB. IB is a program that is ever changing and always building. And this master's program that I'm currently taking part of just is such a nice fit for actually this stage in my career, and learning how to just do things, reflecting and just constantly improving our practice. So the agenda is going to start out with a learning objective that is to support the beginning writer at home. I'm going to go over writing content, the developmental stages of writing, grade level expectation, and then supporting writing at home. Then I'm going to get into voice choice, student agency, and sharing, and then get into the idea about spelling and how to support handwriting. And then, of course, the questions at the end. So before we start, here's one of your first exercises. So you can get your paper and pencil ready, or you can just think about this. Let's get some perspective. Perspective is a key concept in IB, and it's important to look at things through different lenses. So what age did your child start talking? And what age did your child start speaking in full sentences? So think about that for a moment. You can write it down on a piece of paper. And my guess is most of you are writing maybe 2 for the first word and 3 for full sentences, maybe 3 for the first word and 3.5 for full sentences. My children were a full range of 1.5 to 3. But I mention that because the takeaway is to think about this. If your child just started talking about 3 and 4 years old, 3 years old, your child's only been on earth in kindergarten for 5 years, in first grade for 6 and 7 years. So it's just a wonder what they can do in that short amount of time. And we really do ask them to express themselves in writing in kindergarten and in first grade. And it's only been about 3 years since they really started talking. So I think that's an important lens to kind of think about writing and supporting children at the very beginning of their school career. So I gave you some perspective and then I showed you this awful slide. It broke the rules for having nice, clean slides. But I wanted to give you kind of a picture about how schools approach writing. This is a graphic of the Common Core standards. We are a public school, a charter public school, so we are accountable to Common Core standards. And we have a standard for writing. The writing standard is, for this one that I'm showing you, is for text types and purposes. On the report card, not this year, but a prior year, on a report card, you would see writing, you would see content and conventions. Content are the types of writing, and conventions are like capital letters, periods at the end, and spelling. So this is about content. And what I wanted to point out in here is throughout elementary school, students are asked to write narrative writing, opinion writing, and informational writing. And then I wanted to point out something about kindergarten here, and then here's first grade, and here's second grade. So if you look under narrative writing, then if you look at this, this is like an address, W.K.3. So W means writing, and that's the type of standard. K means kindergarten, and .3 is the standard within text types. And it says here for kindergarten that we need to teach students to be able to use a combination of drawing, dictating, and writing to narrate a single event or several loosely linked events, tell about events in an order in which they occurred, and provide a reaction to what happened. So look at this, a combination of drawings, dictating, and writing is the standard in first grade, in kindergarten, excuse me. And then we go to first grade. And here's that W, which is text types and purposes, that's content writing. And then we have point 1, that's first grade, and point 3, that refers to narrative writing. So a student needs to be able to write narratives in which they recount 2 or more appropriately sequenced events, including some details regarding what happened, use temporal words like first, next, last to signal event order and provide some sense of closure. And then second grade, just build on that narrative writing. The same works for opinion writing. Use a combination of drawing, dictating, writing to compose opinion, and then we build on that. That happens throughout elementary school. So I think that's so important to understand that if they're being asked to write a narrative piece in kindergarten, they're going to be asked to write narrative writing in first grade, and they're going to be asked to write it in second grade. So I think that's really an important understanding that parents should have as you think about your book choices, because reading is really a gateway to writing. Reading comes first and then writing comes next. So reading narrative books in any language, because you're working on a concept, has so much value. So you can see these wonderful narrative books in English and Spanish, in English, German, and Spanish. They're available in English and Spanish here. Reading books, opinion writing. These are all English only choices. We've read in the classroom, Read is Best. And then we have more opinion writing in multiple languages, which has so much value. If your home language is not English or German, if your home language is Spanish, and you're working on a concept, you really want to make sure you're solidifying these concepts in that home language. So reading, reading, reading. This is a wonderful series called Little People, Big Dreams. And this is about informative writing, nonfiction writing. And in our own library, we have these books in English and many in German. So Rebecca Gollins is our librarian, and she's phenomenal. And if you haven't discovered our AEA digital library, I highly, highly recommend doing that. I'm going to click on it because when we talk about informational writing, I know in kindergarten at the end of the year, their IB unit is talking about living things. So they talk a lot about plants and animals. And in first grade, we talk about biomimicry, looking at animals and plants and inventing things. Well, right now, this world languages, you can get a nonfiction book, any animal, and hopefully it will load and build. And let's just say cats. It's still loading, but cats. And what's wonderful about this website is you can hear these super simple texts that you can read to your child in many different languages. So you can hear it in English, you can read it in Spanish, you can read it in German. And that's a wonderful thing to start doing now to kind of support the writing that's going to come later. Okay. And then Sora, we just discovered, look in Canvas. Mrs. Gollins is going to be talking about Sora that we just got access to, and it's just more and more books that are going to be available to our students. So reading is really one of the most important things you can do to support your child's writing. Okay. So now we're going to get into the developmental stages of writing. There are stages that kids go through for writing. It doesn't just happen. So here's a short video explaining the different stages that children go through for writing.
Developmental writing stages. Many adults can forget that writing is not instant. It takes time to meet the adult standards of writing. Just as we don't expect a baby who can barely sit up to be able to walk, we should not expect a 4-year-old to have perfect spelling, grammar, or handwriting. Parents understand that their baby is physically developing his or her strengths and abilities. They celebrate what their baby can do at each stage of development. In the same way, we as adults must gain knowledge of a child's writing development so we can celebrate what they can do. So what are the stages of writing development? The first stage of writing development is drawing. Writers tell a story through pictures. The next stage is scribbling. This is when writers use random markers to express his or her ideas. The third stage of development is letter-like symbols. Writers begin to form shapes similar to letters. Writers then begin to use actual letters and try to match sounds from their story to the letters. Normally, they have not developed spacing. Soon after, writers are able to use initial consonants for each of the words in their story. As the writer develops, he or she is able to use initial and final sounds for each of their words, even including short vowels. Next, the writer is seen filling in words with more vowel sounds and will be able to start spelling sight words and familiar names correctly. The writing becomes readable. Remember to always celebrate each stage of your writer's development and treasure your writer.
Okay. Oops, I need to click on it. Sorry. Okay. So in kindergarten, you are going to see all those stages. You're going to see the scribbling. You're going to see the drawing. You're going to see the letter-like symbols. You're going to see the starting to string together letters where you're matching sounds with symbols and no spaces. Then you're going to start to see that initial consonant and then the ending consonant, and then the vowels come later. And then magically it starts to come together into something that your child can read, as well as something that you can read. So here are the kindergarten expectations for writing: that students create illustrations that include settings and characters. So that's that narrative writing that I was talking about earlier. So reading books about characters and talking about characters and settings in any language has value for when they're going to be asked in kindergarten to do some writing. Students write independently with stamina. Stamina is something that you build, I know, from running. But you can't ask a kindergartner or first grader to sit down and write a full page or write for 10 minutes. It is something that they gradually have to build that stamina. The idea, you want to make sure that students have this idea that they can communicate ideas and information effectively. And you want your kindergartner to be able to begin sounding out words and begin getting a sense of a sentence. So this is the scaffolding. Here's that scribbling and the drawing. And you would hate to miss this stage, because look at this wonderful picture. And I mean, you could see so much communicating in this picture. And this is just simply dictating. I felt angry because someone pushed me in the water when I had clothes on. Of course that would get you angry. And what a wonderful opportunity to have the student express themselves without the frustration of not being able to write. So then you start to see the stringing together of the sounds that look like letters. Capital letters are first, lowercase letters come next. And then you can start seeing the more words, and then definitely more words here. I am in the bathroom getting ready for bed, and super cute. So you can see these 3 dots. That's a technique you can use to scaffold. I actually was at the Tide Pools this weekend with my husband. We happened upon him at low tide. We were walking on the beach and we were at the tide pools. And I remember going to the tide pools with my kids. And that's what scaffolding is, the idea of kind of slowly building that independence. And I remember when they were super young, I wanted them super close to me because it was slippery, it was dangerous. But here's this wonderful ocean that I wanted them to explore. So slowly I had to kind of learn how to scaffold their safety so that they can go and adventure on the tide pools. Well, I kind of think writing's like that. The idea you just slowly build, and it's about the long game, you slowly build that ability and that capacity to communicate in a written form. And look at this last student. Here's the next. And this is what you're going to see a lot in kindergarten towards the end of the year. This is super cute. It's a personal narrative. I lost my tooth. Here it is. And I thought it was a piece of ice cream. So I threw it in the trash. Imagine the tragedy there. But just very, you can start to see the spaces. We still have a mix of capitals and lowercase, but that's very developmental for kindergarten writing. Here's first grade expectations. It definitely builds. We ask them to write for many different purposes. The content writing, again, is the opinion writing, narrative, informational, how-to writing. We want students to see writing as a way to express themselves. We need the students to continue to build stamina, and that is definitely something that has to be kind of explicitly taught. You can't, again, just say, go write something. Writing a word, then a sentence, then two sentences. At this point of the year in first grade, we should start seeing 3 to 5 sentences. And that's what we see is about 3 to 5 sentences. And that's pretty good for this time of year. Towards the end of the year in first grade, we build up to about a paragraph, an informational paragraph, and it's often maybe 8 to 10 sentences. We want students to start to notice the writing conventions. Those are the capital letters at the beginning, spaces between words, spelling matters, punctuation, and we want students to use resources to support their writing. And in a bit, I'm going to show you what that means and what that looks like. But things like a word wall in your house, or a sound chart, an ABC sound chart, or books. Oftentimes at the end of the year when we do informational writing, we're writing about animals. I just have a classroom full of picture books and informational books about animals so that they can go get the book on the cheetah and they have the word cheetah right there for them as a resource. And then this would be kind of beginning first grade writing. This is a personal narrative. And this writing is a little deceiving because it's actually pretty sophisticated, but it's actually a 2-part writing. The student decided to write it first and then went back to edit, which is a huge skill in first grade, but we call it fix it up and make it better. And this is super cute. One morning, me and Mama and Dada and Luda getting ready to go to the airport. Next, those are those transition words. Next, we went to the airport. It was so much fun because we played lots of games. Then finally, we made it to Mexico. It was so much fun. So my guess is that when he went back, he looked for capital letters and added some transition words for this. But this is excellent narrative writing for October, November in first grade. Okay, so the idea of really writing as a way to express your thoughts and feelings. This is just a short clip. We had a teacher, a kindergarten teacher at our school a couple of years ago who was a phenomenal teacher of writing to children. That was her passion. And she has this video here of encouraging her daughter to write. at a very frustrating moment. And I'm sure you've had many of these frustrating moments during distance learning, but I think this is just kind of a kick of finding writing as a way to express our thoughts and feelings.
Dear Mom, I'm so mad. Write it down, go ahead. I'm so mad. You stopped giving me dog treats to give to the doggies. I love to give treats to the doggies. Love, Lucy. Don't forget to sign your name.
So obviously she's younger than school age, but she's learning at a very early age how important it is to express your thoughts and feelings. And it's not always sunshine. And, the writing about the different zones you're in is super powerful for a young student. Okay. So now we're going to switch gears to really how can I help my child grow as a writer? So first of all, have a story-filled life. Read at home. Tell family stories and tales. I have a student currently in my class who is struggling with reading. He got a nearly met standard on his report card, so he's like kind of almost there. But every time we have a Zoom, he shows me a new book that he has at home. And he uses transition words in his oral language. He says things like suddenly or it all happened when. And I'm convinced that that is because he has a home filled with books. He listens to books. He is so excited to show me his books. And he is using these, we call it bridging language, in his oral language. And soon, when the reading catches up and the writing catches up, he's going to start to use that in his writing because he really, really is creating a foundation for expressing himself. I happen to know they speak Spanish at home and they get lots of Spanish books and books in Spanish. So they're really honoring their home language and building a wonderful foundation to conceptually understand things that they're going to be asked to do at school. Your child needs to see you write. A thank you card, shopping lists, journal entries, emails, blogs, frustration. If something interesting or funny happens, encourage your child to write about it in a writer's notebook. Have lots of writing tools. In Zoom, we're kind of breaking our rules for pencils only, which as a teacher, it makes me cringe a little bit, but it's okay because you can't see the writing in the video in pencil. So I've let go a little bit, and it's actually been kind of nice because we talk about other ways to solve our problem if we make a mistake and we want to show our thinking. But kids love colored pencils, different markers, staplers. The stapler is the most used tool in my classroom. I'm constantly filling it, and I have about 10 staplers in my classroom because they're making books. Having rulers, super important, and lots and lots of paper. Creating a writing space at home with resources. So having a word wall is super valuable to help with getting words on the paper. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Show an interest in your child's writing. Be positive. You want to make sure you're not expecting perfection. I haven't seen perfection yet in the classroom. I certainly have not seen, you'll see in a couple slides that my own writing is super messy and it is not perfect. If I have to model writing, neat writing, I will have to concentrate and make that extra effort to model writing neatly. But I just want to be positive about writing, just bold attempts at expressing themselves at writing, and just be in awe and wonder that they can do that. Give writing a purpose, lists, feelings, stories. and write for extended periods of time. I've mentioned stamina a couple times. We do something in the classroom called power writing. Power writing is just that. You get a topic, so let's say dogs, and you can actually read some stories about dogs, and maybe you write a list of things that, like, key bullet points about dogs. And then you set a timer for 5 minutes and you say, okay, we're going to power write. And just write for the 5 minutes. You can't stop until the timer's done. And then you look at this writing and you don't focus on the content. You don't focus on the conventions, spelling, periods, capitals. You don't even really focus on the content. Count the words. Write the words and put a circle on it at the top. And then do it again another day. And then this time you might write about money, and you might read a book about money or talk about money or write a list about kind of what money is and maybe different coins and what you do with money. And then power write 5 minutes. Count all the words and see if you can compare the numbers and see if they've written the second time more words. So it's the idea of kind of building that stamina. Kids like it. It's kind of like a video game in the classroom. You know, I got 10 words, I got 15. And then, okay, well, what did you get last time? I got 8. There you go. You're building your stamina. Okay. So I mentioned a few things that that support the writing. A word wall. So in the classroom, a word wall would look like this, where I have different words that they can take off the magnetic board and take it back to their seat to use. We ask you to practice studying sight words. It really is a reading standard. There is a writing component standard to sight words, but they're hard. Writing the word said, SED, no, it's a rule breaker. SAID. So it's on our word wall. So if they need to write said, they can go to the word wall and bring it to their desk. Well, you're at home. And when my daughter was in first grade, we had our sight words on our wall by the dining room table. And it was actually one of the best things we did. A little unsightly. I have seen people get cardboard boxes and just opening up the cardboard box and making a word wall there. And you could actually just write words that your sight words that you've had so far in kindergarten and first grade. You can write those in an organized way. I think being organized is super important. So A, B, C, D, write a list. So when they write, they could just look, oh, we had that word. How do I write what? Well, here it is in W, and it's WHAT. Here is another one that I've seen, a strip and a piece of paper. I did link on here, and it should go right to it, a sight word dictionary for first grade. So you can also put this on your word wall. And then on this one has more sight words. You can include on your word wall expert words right now. And actually in the spring, again, informational writing, when we talk a lot about facts and nonfiction. Well, if you talk to any four-year-old, they're going to tell you about dinosaurs. They're going to tell you about carnivores and the different, and they use huge words. Well, they have those words, but they wouldn't be able to spell it. So writing carnivore on your word wall is a great thing to do, and they could just use that as a reference. Another thing that you could do to support your child with writing, believe it or not, is how to draw. We have these great, I'm hoping this will go straight to Amazon. It does. These Ed Emberley drawing books are phenomenal. I would get animals, and if your child just can follow these directions and draw, we ask kids to draw a lot in school. And for some kids, it's super frustrating. But at home, if you do how to draw, go on the internet. Even I think Mo Willems was doing a lunch with him and a how to draw. That is a super powerful way to encourage your kids to write and to express themselves. The writer's eye, I'll show you what that looks like. This is about the conventions of writing. We do ask you to write for many different purposes: stories, how-tos, informational writing. Those are several sentences, but sometimes we just ask kids to write one sentence to explain their thinking, or one sentence with a spelling word. Well, this is a great opportunity to use the writer's eye. So having your child write the sentence and then looking at this checklist. Oh, do you have a capital letter at the beginning of your sentence? Okay, now we can change it. Do you have lowercase letters after that? Do you have punctuation at the end? Do you have space between your words? A lot of kindergartners at this stage of the year still are working on space between words. So using your fingers between each word is a powerful tool to teach your child. Going back and rereading the writing. Having an alphabet chart is super powerful. You can have that with the word wall. You can have it in a folder, but having it right next to your writer is super helpful, especially at the beginning of the stages when they are just really figuring out in tiger, t, I, g, they've learned zoophonics, and this is a zoophonics chart. Learning objectives. You hear teachers talk a lot about best practices. Well, one of the best practices for positive learning outcomes is for kids to know the learning objective. Just again, back to my running. When I think about a goal, a learning objective, I'm much better on my run if I know how far I have to go. And then I am more successful. So if the learning objective before you start the writing one sentence is that after the sentence, you're going to look for capital letters, that is a great learning objective. Sometimes doing the whole writer's eye is too much. But if you say, okay, we're going to write this sentence and then we're going to go back and just look for where we need capital letters and then leave it at that. So let me show you what that looks like in actual students writing. So this is sentence writing, and this is sentence writing. And then after the child, that child could have the writer's eye right next to the writing, or you can go back and look for capital letters and space between words. But having that writer's checklist next to the writer when they're writing is a tool that we use in the classroom. This is a great example of writing with a learning objective. So these are sight words, actually the spelling words for German, and they're nouns. And so focusing on the capital letter. And the student did a beautiful job, beautiful job. And I wouldn't even point out that this other P is not, should be a lowercase letter, because we have it here, we have it here, we have it here, and we have it here. And voila, you did it. Celebrate that. So I have this up here because writing in school has different purposes. So, sometimes you're asked to write a sentence with a spelling word, or one sentence about the character of the story is, okay? And sometimes you're asked to write a how-to. But this is, in first grade, we do these learning experiences, and the learning experience is conceptually based. It's mostly our IB thinking. Well, the learning experiences can be written in any language. And there's such value in that, because you're actually working on a conceptual idea and not a working language, like teaching them teaching them English and German and how to spell swim in English. So this is concept. So this is how-to writing. It is, the kids had to, in our last unit of inquiry, they had to come up with a pattern, come up with a cycle, and explain the cycle with a first, next, then, and last. And this student did a butterfly, and she typed it in Spanish. And this student also did a butterfly and wrote it in German. Super powerful learning. And those were both the home languages of the child at home. Just gives us shivers. We get so excited when we see that. Okay, so if you ask a kindergartner and a first grader what a sentence is, you really don't know. And it really is something that you kind of have to explicitly teach how to write a sentence. So we've sent this in Canvas a couple times, but it is super powerful for explicitly teaching writing a sentence. So we do teach them in kindergarten and first grade what a noun is and what a verb is and adjectives. And we get into prepositional phrases. Parts of speech are super powerful when you're learning English and then also German, because we both have parts of speech. So let me show you what one filled out looks like. And this is my writing. This is quick writing, generating ideas. We were talking about patterns. Patterns help living things learn. We were talking about animals in winter. And so you'll see, we just generated, after reading this book, we generated a list of nouns. So these are the animals that were in this book, a list of verbs, things that they did. Active verbs are the best ones. A list of adjectives that could describe the noun, and then a list of some prepositional phrases. Prepositional phrases answer where, then what you do is you make a sentence with all the parts of speech. And that's what a sentence needs. It needs a subject and a verb. That's the most basic sentence. And the rest kind of add on to that. So here we have a brown pika runs in the grass. And then the next one is a brown, how about this? And we can get into that even, an orange fox hunts in the woods. So what I thought I'd have you do is, I don't know if you can see this, if you can use this sentence patterning chart. This is a GLAD strategy. This is a language develop strategy. And try to write a sentence. Right now, I'm going to just give you a minute of trying to use these words. Adjectives are brown, red, fluffy, smooth. And you can certainly say a brown, fluffy fox, or you could just have one adjective, a brown fox, and then pick a verb, and then pick where they're doing it and write a sentence. So this is an explicit way. I have no feedback from you, and I want to keep going here. But this is just an explicit way to teach the components of a sentence, and knowing what a sentence is and how to use punctuation is very difficult for a beginning writer. So even before you have a writing piece, right now in first grade, we're about to write character descriptions, which is narrative writing. We're not going to write a full fairy tale because it's just too hard for the first grader, but we're going to focus on a really powerful beginning. And so you can take one of these sentence patterning charts and generate a list of different animals that might be in a fairy tale. And then what those actions, those animal actions are, and then some describing words that describe the animals, and then where they do these things, And you can put those words together to create a powerful descriptive sentence about a character. So this would be a great brainstorming tool or even a talking tool. And you could do the writing on the chart. They don't have to do the chart. That would be too much for you to ask them to fill out the chart and then do the writing. You write the words for them. And then here you have this resource for them that they can look for spelling. They can look for the words that they actually generated and that were part of their idea. Okay. So one of the things I realized as a teacher, but also as a parent, that there's actually formulas to writing. It kind of dawned on me when my son in 8th grade at Einstein actually, by the way, just so you know, does a phenomenal job teaching kids how to write all the way from kindergarten to 8th grade. All 3 of my children who are math children, who have math brains, are excellent writers. And I really think strongly it's because of Einstein and the way that they've taught writing. But writing is kind of a formula. We just finished How to Writing, which is a form of informational writing. That's informational or facts. And there's a formula to that. First, here's how to make lemonade. First, you roll, cut, and squeeze the lemons. Next, mix together lemon juice and water. Then add sugar and stir. Last, pour lemonade into a cup and drink it. I think if I click on here, I have kind of the formula laid out for what we would teach in a 1st grade classroom, that you first start your writing in an interesting way with a question. Do you like lemonade? And then you give your opinion. I love lemonade. It's the best. And then here's your how-to. First, you need to buy lemons. Next, you need to cut the lemons and squeeze them. Finally, you need to stir the lemons with sugar and enjoy the lemonade. So when I realized that writing was kind of a formula, boy, did that help me know how to support my my writers in the classroom and also with my own children. Informational writing is the same way. We're going to do this at the end of the year. You start your writing in an interesting way. Do you know about cheetahs? Cheetahs are the fastest land animal. And then here's the transition words that to start with, a cheetah, and then next, and then you wrap it up. Let me go this way. Okay, so here, this is why how-to writing in 1st grade is so successful, because it really is formula writing. And this is some writing from distance learning. We didn't ask them to first just sit down. We really built up to this. But here's your hook. Come on. First, we had to design our own obstacle course, and it could be as fantastic as they wanted. It didn't have to be like a normal PE obstacle course, but it could be as fantastic as using their imagination. So here's our hook. Come on. First, you jump over lava. Second, you go through the maze. Third, you climb a slippery mountain. Last, you get chased by a bear. You did it. And I'm going to talk about this SP in a bit. So, okay. So you have that formula to writing, and then we get to the voice, choice, and ownership. This is kind of the fun of writing. This is how you develop a love of writing, is by word choice, by how you use your words. And you can teach kindergartners and 1st graders to do that. We have this wonderful book, Roller Coaster. And in the classroom, we did this over Zoom with our arms, and you're welcome to do it with your arms. In the classroom, we would be all over the classroom, all 23 of us, moving our bodies through the roller coaster. But as I read this, we would act it out. And I want you to listen to the word choice that this author, Marla Frazee, uses and how she uses words. So it goes, and you can do it with your arm if you wish. Nobody can see you, so might make you move a little bit here. But it starts out with the little girl who just doesn't know if she wants to be on a roller coaster, but finally gets on, and she's on it and she can't get off. And it starts out with this idea of stretching a word slowly. The train is pulled up the hill by a chain. Clickety, clackety, clickety, clackety, up, up, up. And then, whoosh. Most people scream. Some people can't make a sound, and one person can't even open her eyes. Yes, that is the girl. The train zips, and the kids would be zipping in the classroom. And it zooms, and the kids would be zooming in the classroom. And they're having so much fun with words that they're not getting in each other's way, and they're not being disruptive. They are engaged because the words are engaging. It dips and dives. And then here's a wonderful page that the author actually spins the words around, and it says, and goes all the way around. Whee! And now the ride is over. So that's word choice, and that's word voice, and that's kind of where we start to develop the love of writing. You heard repetition, up, up, up. You heard onomatopoeia. Those are sound words, clickety, clackety, and whoosh. The author did bold words, words in all capital letters to show emotion, to show emphasis. That slowly was stretched out with an S-L-O-W-. Stretched out those words. And let me show you how that looks like in first grade writing. So this is a writer's voice. This is where we start to get the love of writing. And we would definitely read lots of books about onomatopoeia and repetition and noticing in it. And they start to notice it. In fact, it gets a little bit, I'm not going to say annoying because a teacher would never say annoying. But if you're reading a chapter book and you read repetition, you hear them say, that was repetition, because they're starting to notice it. This is wonderful. And you can see it's not a long piece, but you're going to hear how thorough this narrative piece is. We have a sense of time here with this temporal phrase. We teach that. 2 months ago, I went to Monster Jam. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Onomatopoeia and repetition. It was so loud that I had to wear headphones. That's the middle of the story. And then we have the end of the story. Crash. Onomatopoeia. Trucks were smashed. Very powerful writing. And that was done after we read The Roller Coaster. And the student did a beautiful job with that. This student, just another example of stretching out words and repetition and actually writing the piece down, getting it on paper and going back and fixing it up and adding the voice and the interest in the writing. One winter afternoon, I went to the park with my dad and little sister. We brung a ladybug kite. It went so high, whoosh, and then crash. It fell a lot. In the end, we went home. And then the student went back and wanted to add some repetition, up, up, up. And as the reader, you can actually picture that kite going up, up, up. Whoosh, look at that stretched out with capital letter here at the beginning. You can hear that kite just whooshing through the air. Not a long piece, but word choice is super important. And that's that reading again, reading narrative writing from real authors and how important that is. And then here's student agency. Student agency is, again, writing with a different purpose. So here we had the how-to. It was for our patterns unit, and they had to come up with some way to express their thinking. And so student agency is super powerful. And this student did a poster of their writing. They are expressing themselves in writing, and super powerful. You can see the craftsmanship in this. I know it took a long time, but I also know this student, and the student has real passions. And this was a vehicle for him to express a concept. And it wasn't actual physical writing because that wasn't the criteria. So that's that learning objective again. It wasn't a criteria to actually have the student write. The criteria was to see their thinking in a written way. So that's why understanding as a parent what is being asked is super important, so that you can convey that to your child. And then the idea of sharing. This is the thing in distance learning that makes me so sad. And I'm still trying to think of a way to do this in distance learning, but just that ability to share your writing with somebody else. So sometimes it just means getting a stuffed animal. I have Sammy. Sammy loves writing. And he's our inspiration when we're in the classroom, and even in Zoom, he's our inspiration. But just the ability to share your writing and listen to Miss Rodell have a conference with this student, and it's a personal narrative. And it's just wonderful to hear how supportive she is of his getting his idea down on paper.
Go ahead.
In the night, I had drew a digger. I had to change the asphalt. I am making a pile. Later I'm gonna put it on a dump truck.
I'm gonna put it on a dump truck. Great job. So tomorrow, look, you did all of those sounding out all by yourself. So tomorrow we can take this and we can leave finger space between the words.
Yeah.
Pretty good, huh? Are you feeling proud of yourself?
Yes.
Yeah, so she had a goal for next time, but for now that writing was great and she left it alone. And then next time they will go back and focus on just finger spaces. Okay, so I'm not going to go over this, but it's just we're going to go on to spelling now. And it's just to point out how complicated spelling is. And they need to have print concepts first before they can even, so, the idea that there's a front and a back, and you go from left to right, top to bottom, and then the alphabet letters and uppercase, lowercase letters. So you can see this is pre-K to the first of half of kindergarten. And then you get to the alphabetic level where they can start to identify consonant sounds and get that down on paper. Reading and spelling sight words, especially like see and like, that's second half of kinder, first half of first grade, and with resources, with that word wall, with knowing how do I spell was, go to that word wall, look on the chart. Also with that, but also just all the phonics skills that they have to have in place. And this is the order in which we approach it in school. You can look at that at your leisure. So let's talk about spelling. Spelling is, if kids think spelling correctly is the most important thing about writing, and this is what all the kindergarten and first grade teachers really wanted me to emphasize tonight, then they won't take chances. That's that scaffolding. That's that building independence. That's that risk taking. If they're so concentrating on being perfect, then they won't take chances on more interesting words and more precise words. They'll just use the word fun. And just to give an example, last year I had a student who loved her cat and wrote about her cat for half a year. And it turns out she really wrote about her cat because she can only spell cat. And she refused to be a risk taker, and I wouldn't give in. And she, lots of tears in the classroom, but I wouldn't give in, give her resources, give her places to look, draw lines under her sentence, scaffold it for her. But then she realized it wasn't about the spelling. And then she started to write. And boy, did she write. And at the end of the year, she was the one asking in distance learning for more Sammy books. And we would write stories together. If your child chooses the word exciting, but it's spelled wrong, still praise their attempt because they're using a more sophisticated, precise word than fun. Fun and nice and happy, they're great words, but they really don't mean anything. They don't convey enough information to the reader. When rereading writing with your child, discuss the message, and you saw that in the video, and try to convey and say something positive about what was attempted. And then you could say, okay, so tomorrow, let's go back and let's look for capital letters. Let's look at our word wall and look at all the sight words. I'll underline them and you go to the word wall. Try to resist the urge to make corrections. And I know at home that has to be so hard, but that's that independence, that's that risk taking. And it's really the risk taking for adults too, kind of letting them kind of get it down on paper and teaching them how to use their resources. Get a book. Oh, you had a book about a cat. Go get it. You can use that. It has cat written on the cover. Use it. And only in kindergarten and first grade, only expect your child to spell familiar sight words, the ones that we have gone over in Canvas, and known phonics rules. So in first grade, we've done CVC words with short vowels. We've done consonant blends, so like fast and frog, that FR, and then a short vowel. We've done digraphs, CH, ch, SH, sh. And we are just now getting into silent E and long vowels. So I would never expect my first grader at this stage to spell float. That's a vowel team. That's another way to make long O and not with the silent E. We haven't taught it yet, so I don't expect it in their writing. Okay. Learn that. And we do want them to learn that attention must be paid to the conventions for the writing to be understood by the reader. And the first reader is themselves. They need to be able to read it back to you. And so if they're not leaving spaces between words and you haven't told them and you ask them to read it to you, or they're reading it to their stuffed animal, or grandma, they're calling grandma on the phone to read it to them and they can't read it, then they actually kind of understand the idea behind space between words. Maybe I should put space between the words so it'd help me read it. And that SP, super, super powerful tool in the classroom. It allows them to just write more precise words. So here's a personal narrative with wonderful use of SP. And the way it works is they just write what they think it is and they put SP and circle it and they move on. So listen to this wonderful personal narrative. One day I was bored. So they probably, if they didn't have that SP in them and that ability to get that down, they probably would have written the word sad. Well, sad is a good word, but what, did you get hurt? But bored, we can all picture what bored looks like. So I invented a game for it. You need a stick, you need a ball, and you need a slippery ground. Then you grab the stick and hit the ball. And here we go. Here's that voice, capital letters, onomatopoeia, boom. The ball zooms across the room. Finally, it's not a boring day at all. And so if this author just wanted to write sad and made a game and didn't want to use the word slippery. I mean, slippery is kind of crucial for this story in order for the game to work. And so this ability to write SP allowed this author to write the words. Now, sometimes you do have a child that is willing to go along with this SP, but really, really resists it. And usually it's really the strong readers because they have seen the word before. So this is what I do in the classroom. I say, okay, write it, SP, and then at the end, read it to me. And then on the side, on the margin here, I'll do SP and a smiley face, and I'll just spell it correctly for them, their list of spelled words correctly, because it's just going to drive them crazy. And why not give them a resource? And it's up to them whether they go back and change it. And chances are they don't really want to go change it, because not many kids want to go back and edit their work. But at least they are kind of validated that they know that it's spelled a different way. Okay. And then handwriting. Here we are on computers all the time. But handwriting is important. And I encourage you to, I try to do it in my Zooms, holding the pencil correctly. In this resource, Handwriting Without Tears, gives you ways to teach how to hold the pencil correctly. Our kindergarten does a phenomenal job of teaching that. I know it's hard at home, and they start to already get this bad habit, and it's hard to break, but you want that stamina. And if they hold it wrong, you can't build that stamina. We do start with capital letters and lowercase letters. And then I'm going to say that handwriting is important, but remember, we want children to love and enjoy and express themselves on paper. So again, you could do a learning objective, write the sentence, and then the learning objective is to go back and write one word as neat as you can, just to kind of start to get that idea that neatness matters. And it really is, again, so that they can read it as the first reader, and then they can share it and other people can read it. Okay, and so that gets to fine motor skills. And so many kids are doing such a great job with this at home. Piggy banks, just putting coins. You want to build those muscles, those fine motor muscles. Sorting egg cartons, beans, jewels, small pom-poms, Cheerios, getting a needle, plastic needle, and threading Cheerios, and then they can eat it. Squirt toys, playing Operation, Light Bright. I had a student agency. They expressed their visual for our patterns in a Light Bright. Super cool. It was the patterns of the moon. And then they did some writing to match that. But boy, they were inspired. Student agency, it was super fun. Writing standing up, so getting a chart of paper or a big piece of paper and having them write actually puts their hand in the right position for writing, and doing big movements is super good for the kindergartner writer, the first grade writer. Legos, they love Legos. Legos are great. Play-Doh, scissor cutting, not enough scissor cutting in school. We could spend a month on scissor cutting and it would be that valuable, but we don't, and we should. But if you could do anything, just like me, I thought I couldn't run anymore. I thought I was too old. If you can teach your kids to cut paper at home, that is helping writing. That is helping school skills. That is helping for art. That would be a wonderful thing to focus on during this distance learning, is cutting, drawing lines, following it. Easel coloring, that's again having your arm in the right position. Tearing paper, doing mazes. First graders love mazes, and just following along and valuing that it takes a while to get through the maze. And a challenge, try to get through the maze and not touch the walls of the maze. Talk about concentration, stamina, building that ability to actually use tools. And paper crumpling, super helpful. I mean, if they're frustrated, hey, crumple some paper, throw it. Crumple some paper, throw it. That actually helps them with their writing and helps them hopefully get back to the green zone. And then lastly, I'm kind of running out of time here, but again, word choice. I was going to have you write a list of words that mean the same thing as cry or look. And again, because this is a concept of shades of meaning, that if you are a Spanish speaker at home, you could do this in Spanish, because I'm working on the concept. I'm working on the idea that there are different words that mean slightly something different. So if a kid who hasn't heard books and who hasn't heard stories, they're going to use the word said all the time instead of cried or laughed. And in the classroom, we would act this out. We would act out the shades of meaning for the word cry. And so listen to these words: cry, bawl. I mean, imagine how that sounds like in a classroom. A whole bunch of first graders bawling, whimpering. I'm sure you've heard some whimpering during distance learning. Weeping, bellowing, whining. I'm sure you hear whining every day. Well, kids know how to act that out. And if an author uses the word whine instead of the word cry, it gives the reader more information. Let's look at look. They're going to use look the whole time. But if they understand there's shades of meaning to the word look, like spied or peeked or peered or glared or judged. That's an interesting one for nowadays. Standing in judgment, looking, gazing, examining, staring. And then we have a staring contest, and I always lose because kids are always better than the adults. But you can see that word choice is super powerful and makes the writing kind of more enjoyable. So here's word choice. This, I love this student. She has, we were talking about vivid verbs. So instead of run, you can use sprint. So that's that shades of meaning. And here's her story. One day when I was home, I was cold. I was shivering. That's like an onomatopoeia and a vivid verb. When finally I got out of bed, I ran to the window. Swish! It looked like it was going to rain. I think I should go back to bed. But shivering is a great word choice. We, as the reader, can all picture that in our head. And she could have just said, I was cold. I was cold. And that's fine, but shivering gives us a lot of information. This is the same student that same week we were doing vivid verbs. The power kept going out in her house, and she's scared of the dark. First graders are scared of the dark. First graders have nightmares. Just so you know, I always am reminded, you know, at home, I'm always reminded at this time of year when I do this certain activity in the classroom that we talk about fears. And one of the biggest fears of first graders is nightmares at night. So she was going to be in the dark, and she goes, I was bawling. I mean, really bawling. And I could totally picture it, because what a great word choice that she used. And because we talked about vivid verbs, she was able to express herself with more intention. And you get there, but reading and talking and actually noticing words is the way you get that voice and that choice. And you start to develop a love of writing. Okay. So I'm getting to the end, and many resources in the Measured Mom for reading and writing and spelling. Many resources in this Reading Mama. I got this from Betsy Hall. Thank you, Betsy Hall, for sharing your slideshow with me about reading. They really go hand in hand. And then the Brown Bag Teacher is one of my favorites. And there's a wonderful, if you go to her website and you can click on this is live. There's a wonderful explanation for kindergartner writers of how to scaffold writing, how to really put these ways that they can be successful, and then slowly taking those kind of crutches away so that they're being independent with their writing. So that's kind of it. I do have time for questions. You are going to receive a feedback form from this presentation. Please, please, please fill it out either right away or, you know, eventually. Your feedback. We're an IB school. Being reflective is a huge part of who we are. And so your input, things that you found were valuable, things I talked too much about, and maybe even some questions that you still have, please fill out that form. And for specific questions, I am happy to answer any questions and give you some more resources. Here's my email address. I don't know, kindergarten parents, I don't know if you know the AEA email system, but it's the first letter of their first name and last name, and then it's always at aeacs.org. And that's the whole organization operates that way. So I think that's it. I'm going to look in the questions. And Mariana, I'm not quite sure how I see questions. I think we're good.
Yes, we don't have any questions right now.
Okay. Well, again, email me or put them in the feedback form. And I hope you saw that writing is a passion. I love teaching children to write. I thank you so much for what you're doing at home. It's phenomenal. And if you can take one thing away from today, is sometimes just focusing on one thing is enough, and communicate with your teacher. Say, we had a learning objective of just looking for capital letters in this. And then the teacher knows, wow, I'm going to look for capital letters. And we can help celebrate that with you and with your child. It's the long haul for writing. So many things have to come into place for them actually to get it across. So hopefully you got the sense that it is developmental, and that they're pretty powerful. Those little first and kindergartners and first graders, they have amazing vocabularies and they're ready to use it. And thank you so much for supporting them at home. And I have been super impressed with the writing I have seen in Canvas. So I encourage you to continue to keep up the wonderful work you're doing at home. So thank you, and be well and be safe. And it's just a pleasure to be able to convey this information to our learning community. Parents are definitely an equal part of our learning community, right there with the students and the teachers. And we just are so thrilled you're part of AEA. Thank you very much.